So hi everyone. As I said, today we are going to walk you through what Microsoft is offering to secure your servers, Windows and Linux both, and then we're going to deep dive into Linux very specifically. And based on this, our agenda for today would be we're going to cover several critical topics. We'll start by examining current server threat landscape, followed by an overview of Microsoft Defender for servers. We will then explore the capabilities of Microsoft Defender for Linux servers, highlighting some of the product enhancements we've done in the past 6 months. Additionally, we'll share the tips for successful onboarding and management. We can show you a small demo. And then finally, we'll conclude with our small product roadmap. With this structured approach, we plan to ensure that we address all the essential aspects of server security. So servers, as we know, are the backbone of organizations' infrastructure. They host sensitive intelligence and high privilege accounts. A compromised server is difficult to stop, and encrypting can just cripple the operations far more than a compromised single device. And this makes them a prime target for cybercriminals. Cloud servers or virtual machines, they introduce additional risks. Attackers can exploit cloud native tools to move laterally across environments, making tracking their movement much more challenging. The dynamic scaling of servers also expands the attack surface, increasing vulnerability through many more misconfigurations. So, despite the critical role that servers play today, many organizations still fail to protect them, leaving them exposed. The biggest vulnerability? Well, a lack of antivirus and endpoint detection response solution. No server should be left unprotected because over 75% of the ransomware attacks involve a compromised domain admin credentials, which are typically hosted on servers, highlighting the immense value to attackers securing your servers, whether they are on premise or in the cloud. And we believe it's very essential to safeguard your business operations. So we know that now in this modern digital world, comprehensive security has become paramount, and it extends beyond your endpoints to include every other device on the network, and particularly your servers. Knowing that the servers are a prime target for cyber criminals, we want you to consider a very holistic approach while securing your environments to include everything, not just your productivity, mobile or IoT devices, but also servers. A focus for Microsoft Defender is across platform security. But as threats against each device type and platform vary significantly, we want to ensure that we're building security solutions that are tailor made for different devices and platforms. For specifically servers, we have adopted a very tailored approach. Our tailored protection includes detection for different attacker techniques that target various server roles, such as web servers, file servers, database servers, and many more. We make sure that we prioritize your mission critical workloads that are running on these servers and ensure zero workload disruption and a very high confidence before we block any threats. So we as Microsoft offer a server solution called Defender for Servers, which is part of Defender for Cloud. Our server offering protects both Windows and Linux servers that are running on Azure across other clouds like AWS, GCP, and also your on-premise servers. Microsoft Defender for Servers is designed to safeguard machines across hybrid and multi-cloud environments, ensuring robust protection for both Windows and Linux servers. It supports major cloud services like Amazon, Google Cloud Compute Engine, making it very versatile for different infrastructures. The integration with Defender for Endpoint enhances its capabilities further, providing next-gen antivirus protection and advanced endpoint detection and response feature. Automated self-healing and vulnerable assessment further strengthen security measures. We have capabilities that are included in our P2 plan that are built on top of our MD's capabilities, which further optimize for cloud environments, offering just-in-time VM access, file integrity monitoring, and many more advanced features like adaptive network hardening. These features collectively ensure that a comprehensive security posture in a dynamic cloud setting. Well, now having discussed that the comprehensive protection offered by Microsoft Defender for servers is for both Windows and Linux, we now want to focus on what we offer as part of Linux server security. Linux is definitely the backbone of many critical systems, including web servers and supercomputers. So we as a Microsoft better understand the necessity for providing you with a tailored security solutions for your Linux servers. And we've made sure that a solution is built very much according to that need. Now let's delve into the specific tailor-made capabilities that we have built for Linux servers so far. Performance has been our P0 focus over the last few years, and Defender for Linux has evolved into a very server-grade product that is very purposely built for servers, embracing zero workload disruption approach. We have a rich sensor framework with no custom kernel modules, thus providing you a better security, signal efficiency, and stability. We've done a lot of work in the past 1 year to achieve the server-grade performance, which includes some of the adaptive monitoring, some of the intelligence framework that we've built in our product to make sure that we're collecting the data that's relevant and eliminating noise as much as possible. Now, by keeping this server grade approach in mind, we offer you a range of features designed for comprehensive server security. Starting with the posture management, which provides continuous discovery and monitoring of risks across your fleet. It offers a consolidated inventory view, risk-based vulnerability management, intelligent prioritization as well. We have built-in workflows for remediation and tracking to ensure that the vulnerabilities are addressed much more promptly and effectively. Then the third pillar that you see as part of next-gen protection, we offer cloud-delivered real-time antivirus protection, which is powered by AI-driven behavior monitoring. It uses MITRE attack framework as well to make sure that the coverage is much more comprehensive and we give you the 100% detection visibility. After protection, we have advanced and integrated detection and response capability pillar, as you can see. We provide you near real-time and again behavior-based detections, which are following the MITRE attack framework for comprehensive coverage. Along with that, we also have unified investigation experience for our SOC admins to ensure that we're giving you the response and remediation workflows. Now, lastly, with all these capabilities, starting with your server-grade performance, with posture, next-gen protection and detection, we have a very streamlined operation management. We have wide distro coverage, including ARM-based distros, which are GA. We also have integrated security setting management experience for admins to manage security settings via endpoint policies in an enterprise-grade manner. Recently, we've also started supporting multi-tenant environments, and this has proven helpful for large enterprises that are consisting of many small entities. This multi-tenant view in Defender XDR portal enables security admins to get consolidated view of security policies across their entire organization and thus increases their efficiency. Now, by keeping with all these capabilities at the back of your mind, I also want to give you a glimpse of some of the top product highlights that have come from all the investments we've done in the last 6 months. Notably, as I said, server grade performance has been our P0 focus. So with all those optimizations we've done in that bucket, we've come a long way with respect to our performance. It has drastically improved. If we look at our performance numbers, we can see that 95% of our current total deployments are consuming less than 1% CPU and less than 350 MB memory. With these improvements, we are now able to support low resource servers as well, the servers that are just single core or dual core. And this is very well backed up by our data, as you can see, that 20% of our current total deployments are either on single or dual core servers. So that indicates the trust that customers have put us in. Now, to ensure that our customers also have simplified experiences, we've been doing a couple of investments in the past few months. We enable customers to manage the global exclusions, are the exclusions that apply to antivirus and EDR, much closer to sensors. To manage these exclusions from the portal, we've enabled this functionality. This currently is in preview and is soon to go GA in next few weeks. So this definitely has increased the operational efficiency for customers, allowing for much better control over tuning their security settings in their environment. Additionally, thanks to the relentless efforts that our security research teams have been putting in, our detection capabilities have reached a new milestone where we've seen 100% technical level detections for Linux threats, achieving zero false positives in the latest MITRE evaluations. So we believe this definitely positions us as a leader in detection across all stages of cyber attack. Furthermore, the offline security intelligence is another feature, is also generally available now to ensure the robust protection on servers even without the constant internet access. Lastly, support for the latest distributions like Ubuntu 24.04 ARM-based distros also show that we are very committed to staying with current and the industry trends and also match our customer needs. With all these investments, we've seen our product evolve and grow rapidly over last 1 year with an exponential growth. We're also successfully embracing and supporting the industry trends and shift to our cloud workloads. So I believe this would be it from the product highlights and enhancements standpoint. I will hand it over to Simona, who will walk you through the tips for successful onboarding and setting management.
Great, thanks. Thank you so much, Rutuja. So next, let's move on to discussing what are the different ways to onboard Defender servers on your Linux fleet, as well as we're going to discuss what are the different methods for configuring the Defender endpoint agent. First, let's zoom into the onboarding methods for Linux servers. We support different onboarding methods, and the one that would be the best for you heavily depends on where your Linux servers reside and also on your organizational needs and requirements. If your Linux servers reside in Azure, the best way or the recommended way is to leverage native onboarding, also known as automatic onboarding. In this scenario, the only thing you would have to do is to enable the Defender for Servers plan, either plan 1 or plan 2, and then we would take care of everything behind the scenes for you. So we would deploy the Defender for Endpoint agent for you. If your Linux servers reside in multi-cloud, whether that's AWS or GCP, then we also support automatic onboarding. Here, you would only need to configure one more step besides turning on the Defender for Servers plan, and this is to configure a cloud connector. A cloud connector is actually what enables us to establish the integration between Defender for Servers and your multi-cloud environment. And you only need to do that once. Once you have successfully configured the cloud connector and also you have enabled Defender for Servers plan, what happens behind the scenes is that we would deploy Azure Arc and Defender for Endpoint for you. Here you might ask, why do we need Azure Arc? Well, Azure Arc is our ability to actually create a synthetic object for your Linux server in Azure. In this case, you would receive the same parity or the same level of capabilities as you would for Azure. Now, let's move on to the scenario where your Linux servers reside on-premise. Here, you have two ways to deploy Defender for Servers or the Defender for Endpoint agent. One way is the so-called semi-automatic onboarding. In this scenario, you would need to manually deploy Azure Arc. Once again, Azure Arc would create synthetic object for your on-prem Linux servers, so then they would be treated as an Azure resource and they would be populated in your server inventory view. Once you have successfully deployed Azure Arc on your Linux servers, we would then take care of deploying the Defender for Endpoint agent onto your servers automatically. However, there are scenarios where you might be constrained and you do not want to deploy two agents on your on-prem Linux servers or on your Linux servers in general. In this case, we offer the so-called direct onboarding method. This method does not rely on Azure Arc. So what happens here is you manually deploy the Defender for Endpoint agent directly on your Linux servers, regardless whether your Linux servers are on-premise, on Azure, on AWS, or in GCP. Once again, the only caveat here is that you would need to manually deploy the Defender for Endpoint agent. We would not automatically deploy the Defender for Endpoint agent for you as we would in the previous 3 scenarios. And of course, configuring the Defender for Endpoint agent, it's your responsibility on how you want to configure the Defender for Endpoint agent, and I'm going to show you the ways how you can do that in a bit. One additional caveat that I need to mention for the direct onboarding method is that it only supports the Plan 1 capabilities, simply because the Plan 2 capabilities of Defender for servers rely on additional data that we cannot get with just deploying Defender for Endpoint. Let's move on to the next. Now that you have successfully deployed the Defender for Endpoint agent on your Linux machines, you will notice that you have a managed JSON file being created in your etc folder, in your Linux etc folder. This managed JSON file contains the Defender for Endpoint agent configuration. Whenever you provision Defender for Endpoint, it would come with a default configuration. But of course, customers often would like to modify that configuration to meet their needs. So you could configure and modify the Defender for Endpoint configuration via multiple ways. The recommended way is to configure that directly via Defender XDR portal, also known as security.microsoft.com. You could also configure the managed JSON file via a configuration tool of choice, such as Ansible, Puppet, Chef, etc. And of course, we also support command line interface, which is not really recommended for management at scale. Next one. One of the very first MDE settings that we see customers reconfiguring or modifying is the antivirus settings. And in this slide, I hope to clarify some of the different antivirus settings that we offer as part of Defender for Endpoint. So whenever you deploy Defender for Endpoint, automatically, by default, the antivirus configuration would be set in passive mode. But you could actually reconfigure that in to be a real-time mode, or also known as active mode. The difference is that whenever a file is being downloaded or it's being modified, if your antivirus engine is set in passive mode, we would not scan the file in real time, but instead we would scan the file when the antivirus scan runs. Whereas if your antivirus engine is set in real time, then we would intercept the event in real time, send it to our antivirus engine, and really detect threats in real time. In this case, we would also service the alert in real time to you and or apply file quarantine. Another difference between real-time and passive mode is definitions update timing. Of course, every antivirus engine depends on definitions updates and signatures updates, so it can stay relevant. If your antivirus engine is turned on in real time, then the definitions would be updated automatically. Whereas if you have configured your antivirus engine to be in passive mode, then the definitions update would take place only when the scan starts. And the on-demand scan is very similar as in passive mode, with the difference that, as the name implies, you run the on-demand scan on demand, whereas if your antivirus engine is in passive mode, then that runs at a scheduled interval. Let's move on to the next. Now let's zoom into some deployment guidance here. Regardless which onboarding method you choose for Defender for servers, first, the antivirus engine would be deployed in passive mode, and you would get EDR and MDVM, either the premium capabilities or the core capabilities, depending whether you choose Plan 1 or Plan 2. Then we would recommend first to start in passive mode, but then we would advise you to gradually enable additional capabilities on a small batch of servers, like real-time protection and behavioral monitoring, so you can really detect threats in real time, as discussed in the previous slide. We would advise you to test these capabilities on small batch of Linux servers and to monitor for any issues. If you notice any issues, please do not hesitate to reach out to Microsoft support, and we can provide you guidance for exclusion strategies and configuration best practices to prevent impacting critical workloads. Once you have confirmed that there are no issues, you can slowly scale the deployment to your entire fleet of servers. Let's proceed to the next, which is actually our demo. In this demo, I would like to show you how easy it is to actually get started with Defender for servers. In particular, in this demo, my Linux servers reside in Azure. So I would show you Azure, the automatic onboarding of Defender for servers. Additionally, I would also show you how easy it is to configure the EDR agent that comes as part of Defender for servers, also known as Defender for endpoint agent, via the security settings portal, which resides in Defender XDR. So let's get started. Our first step would be to go in Azure and to navigate to the Defender for Cloud portal. Once we are in the Defender for Cloud portal, we need to go to Environment Settings. From here, we need to choose for which subscription we would like to enable Defender for servers on. We could also enable it on the whole tenant. Again, Defender for servers comes in two flavors, Plan 1 and Plan 2. For the purpose of this demo, we have selected Plan 2. And then the only thing you need to do is in the configuration options to turn on endpoint protection. There are a couple of other capabilities that you might want to take a look at and to turn on, but for the purpose of this demo, when you turn on endpoint protection, that would guarantee that Defender for Endpoint agent would automatically be deployed on your Linux servers. Now, the next step, once you've turned on the plan, is to confirm and to validate whether the Defender for Endpoint agent has been successfully deployed on your Linux machine. How you can check that is if you navigate to your Linux server, you go to Settings and Extensions. If you see the md.linux extension or md.windows extension if you're deploying it on Windows servers, and the status shows provisioning succeeded, then you can be assured that Defender for Endpoint agent has been successfully onboarded on your machine. Given that Defender for Cloud and Defender XDR portal are integrated, if you go to security.microsoft.com portal, in particularly under the Asset section, Devices, here you would notice that the very same Linux server, which we showcased earlier, has also been included in your device inventory. And here you could also verify the status, that the onboarding status, that again, the Defender for Endpoint agent has been successfully onboarded. Once you are in Defender XDR portal and you have successfully provisioned that Defender for Endpoint agent, the next step would be to start configuring the settings that come as part of the Defender for Endpoint agent. And one way to do that would be through the Defender XDR portal. But before we start configuring the settings, we need to first enable the capability to configure the Defender for Endpoint agent through Defender XDR. So how we can do that is if we navigate to Settings, then we would need to navigate to Endpoints. And we need to go to under Configuration Management, Enforcement Scope. So here we need to toggle a few buttons in particular to decide which OS versions we would like to manage through the Defender XDR portal directly. For the purpose of this demo, I would like to manage my entire server fleet and my entire OS client device fleet straight from security settings management, so achieve a single pane of glass for device management. Once I have turned on security settings management, it's time to go and configure my very first policy. We go under Endpoints, Configuration Management, Endpoint Security Policies. Here we can see a view of our existing policies for the different operating systems. Here you can see that I have 3 Linux policies already created, and now I'm going to walk you through how to create another policy. So here we would choose the platform. We're going to create a policy for Linux, and we would like to set the settings that are available as part of the antivirus settings. We would give a name to the policy, and then in the next blade, we would actually see all the available security settings that we can configure, such as cloud delivered protection. We could also decide whether we would like our antivirus to be running in passive mode or in real time, and a bunch of other settings, such as also setting exclusions straight from the portal as well. Once we have reached a desired state of our policy, the next step would be to assign it to a set of devices or to all of our devices. For the purpose of this demo, this policy would apply to all my devices. And that's it. That's how I've created a policy. Now, once I save the policy, it would take some time before the policy officially gets applied. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to demonstrate another policy which I have configured previously. So you get a feeling how would the policy look like once it has been successfully applied. So here we see the policy. And in the policy overview and under the policy settings values, we can see all the different settings that have been configured as part of this policy. We could also see to which devices in particular this policy applies. And under the overview, we can see the status, the policy setting status. So here we had 2 devices, and we could see that all of the settings that are targeted by these policies have been successfully applied. If some of the settings, for some reason, do not get applied or there is a conflict, we would let you know so you can go back and modify them. And that's how, for less than 4 minutes, I've shown you how easy it is to actually deploy Defender for servers on your Linux fleet and also configure the EDR agent that comes as part of it to your desired configuration. Next, I would like to spend some time, or I would like to give you a bit of sneak peek into our roadmap for the next 6 months. Let's move one more slide.
Do you see the roadmap slide?
It seems stuck.
It seems a bit stuck.
Okay, just a sec. Seems to be there.
It's okay, even if we don't have the roadmap, even if we don't have the roadmap slides. Oh, perfect, we have it. Excellent. So as my colleague Rutuja previously mentioned, we have recently introduced global exclusions, which include exclusions that are being applied not only to the antivirus but also to the EDR agent. So currently within Defender XDR portal, also you could actually configure antivirus exclusions, but soon we would also provide the ability to configure global exclusions straight within the Defender XDR portal. Also, we are working on simplified onboarding method, and the feature that personally I'm most excited about is tamper protection for Linux. And with that, I would like to move on to our call to action slide.
I hope not stuck.
It's working fine now. Super. So, long gone are the days when Linux has been considered inherently safe. That's why we would recommend you to start your 30-day free trial as part of the Defender for Servers, so you can play around with all the robust security features that we showcased as part of this webinar. In addition, to help you get started and have a smooth deployment, please do not hesitate to reach out to your Microsoft account representative to explore what are the different deployment support options that we can provide. In addition, please join our Security Connection Program community, where we showcase all our new private preview features so you can test them for yourself. Last but not the least, I've included 2 links where you can learn and read more about Defender for Servers and Defender for Endpoint. And with that, I would like to say thank you for sticking till the end. And I would like to open the floor for any questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we do have a few questions in the chat, so I'll just kind of read them off one by one. The first is, what is the difference between onboarding a Linux server with Defender for Endpoint versus using Defender for Servers?
So just to repeat the question, the difference between onboarding Defender for Endpoint and onboarding with Defender for Servers, is that correct?
Onboarding a Linux server.
Yeah, onboarding a Linux server with Defender for Endpoint or via Defender for Servers.
Right.
Great. So Defender for Servers comes into two plans, as previously mentioned, Plan 1 and Plan 2. So as part of Plan 1, you get the Defender for Endpoint agent in reality, which is our EDR agent. So Defender for Servers Plan 2 offers additional capabilities on top of the Defender for Endpoint agent. If you choose to deploy Defender for Endpoint via Defender for Servers, then the billing would happen based on the time the server is on. So it's a consumption-based model, like a capped consumption-based model. So you can for Plan 1 that costs $5. For Plan 2 that costs $15. So if you have some ephemeral servers, for example, right, that are being spun up and down, right, the maximum amount that you would be charged would be $5 per month. But if the server is not running all the time, would be less. And of course, if you decide to go with Defender for Servers onboarding, then we have automatic onboarding, meaning you don't have to deploy the Defender for Endpoint agent yourself. If you decide to go with deploying Defender for Endpoint agent yourself, also called as direct onboarding, as mentioned, then you would need to deploy the agent manually by yourself. So we do not support automatic onboarding for that. And on top of that, once again, you're responsible for automatically onboarding the agent. And that supports only Plan 1 Defender for Servers capabilities. If there are some capabilities that are part of Plan 2, such as just-in-time access control, etc., you would actually need to go through the Defender for Servers route. because these are not supported via the direct onboarding method.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is security setting for managing policies are still missing for RHEL. What is Microsoft doing to resolve this? Also, what is Microsoft doing to include other flavors of Linux into the MDE monitoring and onboarding?
I'd like to take that. So security setting management experience is available on all distros. If you're not able to see that currently on RHEL, you should definitely raise a support case so we can help you figure out why you're not able to see that. But currently we do support it on all the distros that Defender is currently supported on.
Great, thanks. The next question is, when you mention support for offline environments, does this refer to maintaining protection locally without relying on telemetry? Or in the case of Linux, is there a solution similar to the dedicated service proxy available for Windows?
That's correct. So for offline security intelligence, what you basically will do is you'll have one mirror server, which would be connected to the internet, which will pull in all your security intelligence in the latest version. And then from that mirror server as a proxy, you can pull security intelligence onto your other servers, which are not connected to internet.
Great. The next question is, what happens if you ARC enable a server after it has been direct onboarded?
Simona, do you want to take that? Or we can take it offline after.
Let's take it offline.
Okay, great. The next question is, are we charged for a Defender for Servers plan if we already have Defender for Endpoint and just use direct onboarding to a Linux machine?
If you have, if you use a direct onboarding method, then you are still charged as per the Defender for Servers pricing.
Okay, great. The next question is, where can we configure the AV settings for the Linux system?
So as part of the demo, we showed you something called as Endpoint Security Policies tab on the portal. In there, when you click on Create New Policies and select Linux as a platform, you can configure AV exclusions as part of the AV exclusion template that you can see on the portal. So yes, you can configure it via Defender portal. We also allow you to configure it using managed JSONs if you're using Ansible, Puppet as any third-party tools.
Great. The next question is there any option to search the extension under list and push it manually for the servers?
I believe no.
Okay. The next question is, where does the policy wizard come from in the menu?
So that is what you get after you enable security setting management. So as part of the demo, you would have seen that Simona went to the settings tab on the portal, the XDR portal. From there, she enabled the enforcement scope, and then whether she wants to apply the security settings to all devices or only to tag devices. Once you've successfully enabled security setting management on your tenant, then there's a tab called Configuration Management, under which you'll see the Endpoint Security Policies as a sub-tab. There you'll be able to configure and see all the policy wizards.
Great, thank you. The next question might need a little more context, but I'll ask it anyway. Maybe you have a better understanding of what they're talking about. But it is it necessary to assign them a license? If we need more information, just let us know.
I don't really understand the question. Is it necessary to assign a license for the server, or?
I mean, I believe if they're asking about before they begin the automatic native onboarding, is it necessary to assign a license? Then yes, it is necessary to assign a license. Whether you're P1 or P2, that you do need to select before you start onboarding.
Great.
Oh yeah, you need to go to settings, and then you don't really assign a license, right? It's a plan that you need to enable, and you need to choose whether you would like to go with plan 1 or plan 2, and you need to turn it on, right? You need to switch on the button, which would enable the plan. And once the plan gets enabled, that's when we would deploy the EDR agent on your machines.
Great. The next question is, how do we refresh the data captured in the Defender for vulnerability management by the agents?
So this is real time, I believe, so you don't have to manually go and refresh it.
Okay, great. The next one is, does it support for SUSE on IBM P series server of SAP?
So if the question is whether we support SUSE distro, we do support SUSE Linux Enterprise servers 12.x and 15.x. Yeah, so we do support SUSE distro.
Thank you. The next question is it recommended to enable PUA feature on Linux for SAP servers?
It is not recommended. I believe this should be, so we don't give you a recommendation whether you should enable it or not. This is completely based on your environment's context and security need. But this would definitely increase your posture. So
Great. The next question is, what's the difference in applying AV policies from Intune and Security Portal?
it is one and the same thing. You can use Intune or Security Portal. They're basically the mirror image of each other. If you configure a policy from Intune, it will reflect in Intune portal as well as your Security Portal. And same, it stands true the other way around as well.
Great. The next one is, does Defender for Cloud protect virtual machines with SO Windows 10.11 with this license?
Defender for servers, as the name implies, protects only servers. Windows 10.11, we consider them client devices, and then you would need to have Defender for Endpoint license to protect those devices.
Thank you. Next question is, why do we have managed security policies for Linux or Windows servers via Intune? One of the biggest challenges is managing groups in Intune that can't be migrated into MDE.
Okay, so if you're using Intune, or what we call it, a security setting management experience on the Defender portal, you have to create Azure Active Directory groups and not the group IDs to manage policies. But we do want to allow customers the flexibility of, or IT admins, the flexibility of configuring the security settings, not just via XDR portal, but also Intune portal, because we've seen customers who have IT admins who don't have access to the XDR portal, but they have access to the Intune portal. So we want to keep that flexibility enabled for customers, and we want to use Intune and XDR as our one-stop shop for managing all security settings that you can have.
Great, thank you. The next one is, for the MDM onboarding, is this only for Debian or RHAT servers?
It applies for all the distros, not just for these two. All the distros that we support, it will apply for all.
Great. Next question is, if I onboard the server using an agent from the MDE portal, which license will it use if I don't have any Azure subscription available?
So if you onboard a server using the agent from the MDE portal, then you would need to have bought our Defender for Endpoint for Servers license. So historically, we had two ways of billing servers. One was through Defender for Endpoint, the license-based and the capped consumption-based. So if you decide to go with onboarding the agent from the MD portal, then you should have bought our Defender for Endpoint for Servers license. Otherwise, you would be uncompliant.
Great. Next question is, how can we forcibly release the isolation for Linux servers?
So if you're talking about device isolation here on the portal, there's an option to isolate a device as well as unisolate a device. It's just one click.
Great. Next question is, if we onboard a server directly to MDE instead of through Azure, Arc, and Defender for Cloud, which charges to a subscription, how do we purchase the licenses?
You would need to reach out to your Microsoft representative for this, and then they would guide you through the through the process if you would like to purchase the Defender for Endpoint for Server licenses instead of using the Defender for Servers billing method, which is a capped consumption model.
Great. And then the final question we have is, I have already started direct onboarding of my servers. How do I switch over to automated onboarding using Defender for Server plan in Azure?
You have started with direct onboarding for a particular subscription or for your entire tenant. We would need a bit more context to provide the exact guidance when it comes to switching from one to the other.
Great. We'll get that information and then take that question offline. So with that, all the questions are answered. And I'd like to thank you, Rutuja and Simona, for being our guests and for sharing the great information with our community. Also, thank you to the Q&A team who helped us with answering the questions and providing the resourceful information. To all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. Together, we can make a global impact. So join us at aka.ms/security community. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. For those of you who may have additional questions on the topic we just covered or other product-related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/mdxdr community. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.